Hello and welcome to another edition of the District of Sports podcast. I'm George Gerbo. A reminder to check us out wherever you get your podcasts. That includes Apple, Google, Spotify, TuneIn, and more. Just search District of Sports in your favorite podcast app. Also check out all of our sports coverage at washingtontimes.com/sports. The Washington Commanders, yes, the Washington Commanders are 3-1 and lead the NFC East after winning 3 straight games. Surprising to some, if not everybody, here in the DMV. And to break it all down on the Commanders' hot start is Alex Flum of DC News Now, joining me as we get into what has made this team world beaters through a quarter of the season already. Alex, good to see you once again.
Good to be here with you, George, and good to be talking about some positive stuff. I mean, I know a lot of the teams we cover out here in the last stretch of, our lifetime, we haven't gotten to talk about this too often. So anytime this opportunity comes up, we take it, right, George?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, Nationals cruised to an identical record, 2 seasons, 71 and 91. Hard to do that 2 seasons in a row. Maryland is 2-2, and things not looking good there. But shockingly, the Commanders, which have been, it's I don't say it to be facetious, like they've been a punchline for a lot of this league, and the way that the country, the NFL public at large looks at Washington, whether it's been the stadium, whether it's been previous ownership, whether it's been previous coaches, whether it's been previous bad draft picks and all this stuff. And you've been kind of, front line with this rebuild and this, transition into the Josh Harris era. And all of that's well and good. Commanders fans have heard it before, but man, now you actually have what the most energy, I think, in this town for professional football since RG3 broke onto the scene and had those wins, and people started to believe. And now you've got the numbers to back up what you're seeing, what your eyes are seeing on the field. They're not just wins, they're substantial wins. They go into Cincinnati on a Monday night and beat the Bengals and score 38 points. They go into Arizona and score 42 like it's nothing against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. It's the most points in back-to-back weeks since 1991. They won the Super Bowl that year. And so you've got a lot of people starting to believe that this is something that can be sustainable, Alex. Is it something that it can be sustainable here for these Commanders in this hot start?
I mean, I think it's absolutely sustainable because it's a different story from 2012. It may look the same, but it's a little different because there's a few different things we can look at here. First off, RG3 was a great runner. He was a good passer. Jayden Daniels is a great runner and a great passer. So you have, like, a lot of people have been saying Jayden Daniels is a passer that also runs as opposed to a runner that maybe sometimes passes like we see from other quarterbacks in the league. So that's first off one thing. I think I would say no question right now, Jayden Daniels is already better than RG3, which is scary to think about because RG3 had such a good rookie year. On top of that, RG3 was here when Dan Snyder was the owner. There was a lot of dysfunction, a lot of scandals that were bubbling up that we would find out about many years later. We don't have that right now. We have the Josh Harris ownership group cleaning things up. We have a new GM in Adam Peters who's allowed to do his job. We have an experienced head coach in Dan Quinn that is on top of things, and a staff that is experienced, and a revamped roster. So in a lot of ways, the scenario is a lot better than it was back then. So on top of all of that, we have here in this situation the experience, or the knowledge of what went wrong with RG3 and what went wrong with all these other quarterbacks that run the ball. So they know how to be extra careful. That doesn't mean they will be, but so far it's looking like they will be. And Jayden Daniels is putting up numbers in 4 games that are unheard of. I said to a friend yesterday that through 4 games, there's only one quarterback I've ever watched through 4 games and thought, this guy already, I think, has the potential to be a Hall of Famer. And you know what his name is? Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not saying Daniels is Patrick Mahomes and we still need to see more, but there's no reason to believe that this isn't sustainable.
To give you the complimentary stat, his 82.1% completion percentage leads the National Football League through 4 weeks. It is the highest in league history through a player's first 4 games since another Hall of Famer, Tom Brady, 79% in 2007. So he's got the numbers, and that's kind of like where, like you're in contrasting it with RG3, where what can sustain it, completion percentage, regardless of the opponent you're playing. And granted, the Bengals have started a little bit down, the Cardinals have been mixed, but when you've got something ironclad as that through 4 games, that you continue to find your receivers and not make mistakes throwing the ball in terms of interceptions, in terms of incompletions. He's 26 of 30 on Sunday for 233 yards, touchdown, did throw a pick. But when you're that consistent and that accurate in throwing the ball, that's going to help you long run, even though you've only played 4 games in this league, to acclimate better when you get into deeper opponents and tougher situations later on down the line.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about those names that he's in the company with, like, he's not playing with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. He's not playing with Deion Branch and Randy Moss. Like, Terry McLaurin's an excellent wide receiver, but I don't know if Terry McLaurin is necessarily one of the greatest receivers of all time. So, I mean, Olamide Zaccheaus, again, good player, but he's not an all-pro NFL wide receiver. I mean, Brian Robinson, there's something to be said about how well he's playing, but Jayden is doing this so far with rookie Luke McCaffrey, like an offense that isn't filled with all-pro weapons. So think about it. Imagine, and we talk about the sustainability, imagine how good he can be when he eventually has a year or 2 under his belt, and maybe they put in some bigger pieces with him and this offense grows. It's scary in a good way for Washington fans to think about the potential of this situation.
And to mention Brian Robinson, that's kind of been a key part of this, is the running component, where Robinson and Jeremy McNichols go for a combined 167 yesterday and 3 touchdowns on the ground, which is going to take the pressure off of your quarterback to have to make pressure and make throws and win the game with his arm completely when you've got a running game that can do that. And I love seeing it for Brian Robinson, who, if you're from around here, everybody knows his story. Not only coming through what like Terry McLaurin, what being under the previous regime, and now getting to see kind of like a glimmer of hope here, but after being shot in the district and recovering from that and coming back and under just going through that entire traumatic situation, to now to be able to see some glory on the other side of it is really awesome for a guy like him.
Yeah. And I said, I think he's right now, the way he's playing, and I'm not putting Adrian Peterson in this category because when he was here, it was late in his career, past his prime. I think Brian Robinson's the second best running back right now we've seen for this team in the last 25 years. The only one I put above him is Clinton Portis.
Yeah.
Because Clinton obviously could do incredible things and was a machine. But, I would say Brian Robinson, we talk about that 2012 year, he's probably better than Alfred Morris was.
Yeah, that's the other one that comes to mind, is that Alfred Morris year. And that's the only one, right?
And Alfred Morris had the benefit of people were all the time thinking, what's RG3 going to do? And it took the attention away from him. And I think the same thing with B-Rob and Jayden. Jayden's definitely helping B-Rob, but I think Robinson as a pure runner is better than Morris. You watch him run, he's so patient. I think back to his run against Tampa. I think it was Tampa, maybe it was the Giants game, where he had the one run where he kind of went into the line and then shot out of it like a cannon out of the crowd there. He had a great run, if you recall, last year against Denver, where he was just running and he had the blockers in front of him and he kind of just shoved one of his teammates into another guy to build a block for him. He has such great vision, and he's fast and he's strong. The one thing I think Brian Robinson could still improve on is those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations, being able to get that yardage at the goal line. But I can tell he's already getting a little better at that. And he doesn't have to do everything. Some running backs, they have to be the workhorse. And with Eckler out, we thought maybe he would be, but McNichols really stepped up in that game, kind of had a career day. And let's just say that one penalty, they call it the excessive celebration, that was ridiculous.
Oh,
yeah. But no, but I think the even bigger thing is the fact that the last couple of weeks, they figured out how to get Terry McLaurin involved. And I think once you do that and add that in, that adds the whole other dynamic too.
And yeah, once you get Eckler completely back into the fold, recovering from a concussion, he's been one of my favorite players in the league to watch over the last couple of years, and has really torn it up with San Diego. As a super cool guy, and just if you've seen him in his off the field appearances, really charismatic, genuine guy, and it'd be nice to see him get involved a little bit more in this Commanders offense once he gets healthy. A big part of that's making both Daniels' life easier and the running games getting going, the offensive line, which completely maligned last year. They gave up the second most sacks, 65 sacks. They gave up the second most sacks in the NFL last season. Only 9 through 4 games this season, so roughly puts you on a pace for 38 at the end of the season. And a lot of that credit has to go to just the turnover there, and it's guys like Tyler Biadasz came in from Dallas, was an experienced guy. Nick Allegretti came in from Kansas City. The one guy, the holdover guy they keep is Sam Cosmi, who was, a Ron Rivera era draftee, and he's re-signed just before the season. But Charles Leno leaves. Everybody else around that line changed over, and it's crazy because that's such a big part of the success in this league is getting that right, and you generally can't do plug and play. You especially can't do it in college, as we've seen in places. But in the NFL, it's even harder when you've got grown men coming at you, and we're just going to stick 5 guys here and hope they work together. And it really has, Alex, in these first 4 games, especially in terms of the protection component and getting those holes to allow Daniels to work as well as the running backs.
Well, first off, we have to keep in mind Sam Howell was historically bad at escaping pressure. I mean, we give him credit. There were times when he was able to get out of pressure, but still took the sack. Jayden Daniels might be historically good at avoiding sacks. There's been a lot of times where, this guy's going to get sacked. And now at this point, it's like you just assume he's not. But all that being said, the offensive line has been superb. There were so many concerns about it, and they've looked good. Sam Cosmi continues to play like an all-pro. I mean, Nick Allegretti has really stepped up. Biadasz has been a solid center. And the interesting thing is at the left tackle position, they didn't know what was going to happen going into the year. It's been Cornelius Lucas and Brandon Coleman splitting snaps at left tackle, basically a 50-50 split. And what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So I think it seems to be a solution right now. As long as that's working, they might as well keep going. I think there might be a time where Coleman will eventually overtake Lucas because he has been really good. But I feel like we don't see that a lot where a team just rotates their left tackle position, but it's certainly in the realm of possibility that some plays they think Coleman is better and some plays Lucas is better. And why not roll with that for that? So,
and protecting Daniel's backside too, which is kind of crazy, where you'd think I want the inexperience or the splitting of a position to be the guy he can see on his right in front of him, but instead it's his back. The split is coming on his backside where he's not necessarily looking all the time, and the fact that it's working is incredible. Yeah,
so it's the O-line. I think not enough can be said about how critical that is for this team, and I think it's making a huge difference so far.
And let's play it forward, both in just the energy that you're seeing around town. You've covered camp extensively, and things started to feel different last year as Harris and Mark Ein and the rest of the ownership group kind of got into place. And you saw a lot of that continue into training camp this season, and now just the sense you get from being out at practice and being and talking to fans and everything else and being at games that it actually feels different to them, and that it's not, well, they've done this before, and there's going to be kind of a whiplash effect where it comes back down to earth. We mentioned RG3. Did not mean to leave out the Kirk Cousins moment in time with You Like That and everything, and how that was very, getting to the playoffs, and they lost to the Packers in the playoffs. But that was another supernova kind of moment in Commanders' recent history. And it's crazy to say that because, again, it's a franchise that's won 3 Super Bowl titles, but still pining in this region, still pining for something that's not 30 years ago, which is what the glory was before we can remember. And does this feel like they've got it in the place now where they can go forward and actually build this thing into something that's, Washington's going to contend for a division title over the next 4 or 5 seasons, as opposed to this, they got hot one year, snuck into the playoffs, won a game, that type of thing that we've seen over the past decade? Is it actually foundational now at this point in time?
Well, first, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that swore off the team because of Snyder. So just Harris being in the room, not even talking about a quarterback, not even talking about winning, just Harris being there made certain people want to watch again. So that was the first step. Obviously, last year was rough, but people were thinking, we can at least support this team again. Maybe not outwardly, maybe not all the time, but people started thinking they could support the team again. Now, I think everybody's coming out of the woodwork because, like we said, it's like that RG3 season and like the you like that year. And those seasons, when you look back, they feel like a blur. But people, like you were saying, hope that this one will continue on and be a legitimate, actual continued success. And right now, I think there's no reason to think it won't be. I think my message to fans would be to actually let yourselves believe that this is happening. Like Ted Lasso, believe, if anybody knows that reference. But I mean, there's from top to bottom, you have an owner that's dedicated to making the team a success, that owns other franchises that have had success. You have a GM that totally revamped the roster and appears to have the freedom to do that. You have a coach, like we said, that knows what they're doing, a good staff, a revamped roster. And then you have the quarterback that we were just talking about before that under the eye test looks really good. You don't have a quarterback that, had one good game and that was it. I mean, you have a quarterback that's being mentioned in the same statistics as Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if you're having that through 4 games, and they've punted once in 3 weeks, one time in 3 weeks,
Poor Tress Way, who's been the perennial Pro Bowler for this team. He can't go out and do his craft because the offense is too good now.
He's having a good time still, I think. You have 1 turnover in 4 games. I mean, I said yesterday, if that defense can start playing well, they're a playoff contender. And right after I said it, the defense got 3 straight stops. So, I will say when I was at the Giants game, the fans, I thought there'd be a bigger showing. Still a lot of blue in the stands. The fans seemed to be kind of slowly getting in there. Didn't seem to have quite the energy you would think. After these last 2 weeks, I think, and, speaking of the Browns, their fan base is at the lowest of lows right now. I think that environment next Sunday is going to be incredible. And I think the place is going to be packed. Fans are going to be excited. People going to their first game in a very long time because they want to seize this moment. They're 3-1. Like we said, we don't know if that'll keep going, but I'd like to think it will. They're home the entire month of October. Home in the area, 3 home games. And then their one road game is at Baltimore, which after we watched last night, not going to be an easy matchup. But there's no reason to think that this isn't sustainable. I'm not saying they make the playoffs this year. They might not, but they're in the position to do so. The Cowboys don't look great. The Eagles don't look great. The Giants look so bad, I can't even use not great to describe it. So I think the Commanders are in a good spot right now. I think out of the 4 teams in the division, they're in the best position, which is wild to think. When we looked at where things were exactly 2 years ago, exactly a year ago even.
Let's round it out on that as we play it forward, because it really is potentially, good in a sense for getting reps under your belt against teams you can beat, and then backloading the difficult parts for a rookie quarterback. They very well could be 7-2 if we say they lose to the Ravens, which again, the Ravens play amazing out of their shoes like they did against the Bills, and then they, kind of play down to some teams. Game is in Baltimore, but be curious to see if it ends up being a 50-50 split with obviously how close the stadiums and the fan bases are. But the Browns and the Panthers and the Bears are all home games. They're all winnable home games. And then you're on the road at the Giants. All of that looks like it could shake out the 7-2, but then from from Veterans Day weekend on, potentially, and we'll see when we get down the line to it, could be the toughest schedule in the league at that point. The Steelers at home, though, 2 games against the Cowboys, 2 games against the Eagles, on the road at New Orleans. home against the Kirk Cousins homecoming Falcons game. So you got a lot of like intangibles in there. And then the Titans is the easiest game as it stands now of that bunch. But the rest of those all have their interesting demons and tricks to them that could make this a very tight end of the season in the division. And Philadelphia has not looked as amazing. I think the Cowboys can still do things to put themselves together to look like the team they were last year and win 10 plus games. But Philadelphia, I don't know if it was Kelsey retiring or what, but they've looked like the whole last part of 2023, they looked like a team in decline. And then they got to Tampa in the wild card, and it basically was like the funeral ceremony of it, and everybody kind of knew how it was going to go, and Tampa goes out and just whips them. And so here you are at the beginning of this season. They have not looked like the Eagles team of a year ago, 2 years ago at this point. So that gives you some hope for, if you're a Commanders fan, that those are winnable games this year. Cowboys games are going to be what the Cowboys games are against Washington, but that back end of the schedule is probably what is the most concerning, Alex. And that's why it's so important to go out and take care of your business against the Browns, who you can beat, against the Panthers, who you can beat, and a nice rookie number one, number two overall, Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels playing each other at Northwest Field.
Yeah. So Northwest Field, you got to keep remembering that's the name now.
Northwest Stadium. Is it Northwest Field or Northwest Stadium? Because I about went FedEx Field, and then I almost called it Commanders Park, and then it's back to I'll get the name right. Northwest.
Too much Northwest. But anyway, I think when I hear that schedule, it doesn't sound as daunting as maybe it would have before the season. If you looked at the schedule before the season, the back half might have seemed to be a little easier, but right now it's shaking out to be a little tougher.
Yeah.
But, I think this will be the real test because, the NFL, anything could happen in any given Sunday. We know that. And the Commanders, we didn't expect them to be 3-1. I thought they'd be 1-3 right now, maybe 2-2. But they're sitting here 3-1. So you just never know what's going to happen. But you know that every team out there is sitting there thinking, all right, how can we game plan against Jayden Daniels? How can we crack the code with this guy? But it's going to be very telling to see how, as the season goes on, he continues to do against some of these teams. But I mean, if they can be in a position where through 8 games, they have 5 or 6 wins, I mean, that's a great spot to be in. But, like I said, it's early, but right now, I don't see any reason to think that they couldn't but couldn't get to the point where they're winning that NFC East or even getting in the playoffs. So, I mean, like I said, Commanders fans have every right to be excited right now, and they should be.
Alex Flum, DC News Now. Let everyone know where they can find you weeknights on game night and everywhere else.
Yeah, we got game night every night at 11 p.m. on DC News Now, WDVM. You can go ahead to our website, dcnewsnow.com, to find your local channel information. You can follow my stuff, Twitter at Alex Flum TV, Instagram at Alex Flum Sports. We got Wizards and Capitals season coming up now too. Spirit going to be in the playoffs pretty soon. So we're on top of that. And of course, high school football every Friday night, and college on Saturdays. It's been a little rough for Maryland, but keep an eye on Navy out there.
Undefeated Navy.
Undefeated to start the season. Yeah.
Busy time in the region for sports in the DMV. Alex, I appreciate the time as always.
Thank you, George.
My thanks again to Alex for joining me. You can find him on DC News Now's game night during the week and on social media at Alex Flum TV. And a reminder that you can find the District of Sports wherever you get your podcasts. Just search District of Sports in your favorite podcast app. Also, check us out on social media at Washtime Sports, and for me, at Gerbo3. I'm George Gerbo. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.